Hi, it's Bruce Wallace from Dundee and Victoria Chess Club in Bonnie, Scotland. Now, I've got to apologise, I've got a heavy cold, but I've got to show you this game because it's a little gem, particularly for the player from our club, Alistair Dawson, who's rated 1851, and he's our current club champion. And he was playing in the Perth and Kinross Chess Festival yesterday, and his opponent in this game was none other than Jacob Aagaard, the reigning British champion and Grandmaster, with a rating of 2,557. So in other words, he outgrades Alistair here by some 700 points. Now, Alistair has been studying the English opening, and particularly a book by Neil MacDonald called Starting with the English, and he found a line that he was able to play in this game. So let's get on. C4, then c6, and according to Alistair, what's recommended here is the move b3, then d5, bishop b2, knight f6, queen c2, and the purpose of this move is to stop white developing his bishop to f5, e6 then, knight f3, bishop d6 just developing, e3, castles, bishop d3, and you can see the plan here. Alistair calls this a sort of reverse Queen's Indian, that he's getting batteries against the pawns on g7 and h7 with potential threats. So it's an all-out kingside attack here for white. Aagaard develops the other knight, g4. Now, the pawn can't really be taken here, because if knight g4, bishop takes h7 check, with a small advantage but not massive to white. So maybe playable, but obviously Aagaard thought better of it. So after g4, black played e5 with a threatened pawn fork on e4. Now here, recommended by Shredder, is knight c5, threatening the light squared bishop and minimising white's attack. So bishop e2, then knight takes g4 with a very good edge indeed, up a pawn with advantage. However, after g4, black played e5, threatening the pawn fork, and g5, nudging the knight. Knight to e4 now, blocking the diagonal for the white square bishop here. Knight c3, and recommended, black swaps off the knight, queen takes, and we see now the lining up of another battery, this time on the g-pawn. So black merely reinforces the pawn on e8. Here, very obvious, if e4, queen takes g7 mate. So white is thwarting black's attempts to go for the pawn fork, and it's a good example of patient play, not moving a piece to get out of a fork, but trying counter threats. But rook e8, supporting the pawn, patient play from Aagaard, and this allows white to castle queenside. But this increased black's advantage, and black immediately thrusts at the queenside with a5. Another good move here recommended is knight c5, having a go at that bishop with really decent advantage. However, after castles a5, Alistair now moves his bishop back to b1, so he has a plan here of putting the queen in front of the bishop, creating a battery this time against h7. Black plays b5, continuing with his pressure on the queen side. A good move there possibly, bishop b4 according to Shredder, forcing the queen to move, queen c2, and continuation of e4, and basically black's advantage here is almost 3 pawns. White's getting completely cramped, and black's pawn chain here stops his pieces completely, so huge advantage. So bishop b4, a good opportunity, but b5 still maintains the advantage, and then d4 by white, and this is another way of allowing not to be worried by the pawn advance to e4 here, because white could then advance his pawn to c5, which is what happens. e4, c5. Now here, bishop f8 from black, which defends the g7 pawn, but apparently as playable there's bishop c7, knight must move knight d2, and then queen takes g5. Now the queen to an extent guards that pawn, and can go to f6 if a rook comes to the open file, and still with 2.46 advantage to black. However, after c5, bishop f8, then after bishop f8, knight d2, and b4 attacking the queen, queen c2, and again the opening up of another battery here, this time against the h pawn. Should the e5 pawn not be there? So queen comes in, snuffles the pawn, and now f4. Now here again, e takes f au passant, it's mate. So the queen must move, so the queen goes to h4. Now here Alistair played knight f1, and the idea behind this move is to allow the queen access along the second rank and to defend the e3 pawn, a possibility of maybe queen coming to g2 at some point, doubling on the open file. So white's going for counterplay here. Black plays knight f6, and then Alistair plays h3. Now black now plays the move bishop g4, which seems quite crushing. If, for example, if white takes the bishop, the rook is dropped, and it appears that black has won the exchange. However, Alistair plays a very courageous move here. He plays h takes, bishop. Now here the queen doesn't have many choices. As you can see, the queen can't move anywhere away from the rook, because the squares g3 and f2 are covered, one by the knight, one by the queen. These two squares, the rook, and this square on g5 covered by the pawn. So it looks like black really doesn't have a choice but to take the rook. Could take the f pawn, but that means just dropping a piece for a pawn. So queen takes h1, and now there's a really nasty little move that white plays, that white must have seen when he played h takes bishop. Can you see it? Pause the video. Knight h2, and this nets the queen, because the queen supports the knight covers the squares f3, the queen covers the square g2, and the rook hits the queen on the first rank. So white had foreseen this little trap when he played h takes g4, and it was a brilliant coup against, remember, the British champion. Not often that a high class GM will make an oversight like that. I think he's underestimated Alistair's ability here, but queen takes rook is the only option. Queen takes queen, rook a7, g5, knight d7, bishop c2, f5, and here Alistair offered a draw. Jacob Aagaard says to Alistair, at this point I'm prepared to offer you a draw if you'll accept it, and Alistair did. And the reason Alistair said that he accepted a draw was because it would take a while for his position to unravel. Very difficult to get these bishops active, and Aagaard had counterplay on the queen side, and therefore Alistair accepted the draw. But in fact, white has a massive advantage here of 3.19, and perhaps Alistair should have played on. But a point here is that Aagaard, who wasn't having a great tournament, obviously wasn't playing to full potential, because you probably would have seen that trap potentially. However, if the British champion, who outgrades you by 700 points, Jacob Aagaard, Grandmaster, offers you a draw, I think you might accept too. But a fantastic coup, winning Aagaard's bishop and queen for two rooks, shows that any player can be dangerous. And well done, Alistair. and hope you enjoyed this video. See you soon on YouTube.